The EU says Recep Tayyip Erdogan's comments about President Emmanuel Macron are unacceptable. Leaders from the bloc have called on Turkey's president to stop his attacks on the French leader. Macron has pledged to step up the fight against radical Islamism following the murder of the teacher Samuel Paty. But tensions are continuing to escalate, with Erdogan's call for a boycott of French goods. Let's go over to Brussels to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who has more on this story.
Well, Oliver, we know, of course, that relations between the European Union and Turkey have been uneasy for some time. This is in spite of the fact that officially it still wants to accede to the European Union and is a NATO member. But over the weekend, those relations took another blow with a war of words, essentially, between the French president and the Turkish president over comments that Emmanuel Macron had made around the death of Samuel Paty. It's led to a worrying decline in those relations, and one that experts are warning could get worse and have ramifications for the whole of the EU. Angry and on the streets, protesters in Turkey and across the Arab world demanding the French president stop what they see as his attacks on Islam. And a boycott too, with French goods being taken off shelves amid a growing social media campaign. All this amidst a war of words between President Erdogan and Emmanuel Macron.
I am now telling my nation, just as they are saying in France, not to buy anything from Turkish brand.
Türk markalı mal satın alınmayın diyorsa
I call on my nation here and now. Do not pay attention to French-labeled goods. Do not buy them.
Asla iltifat etmeyin. Bunları satın almayın.
Criticism was sparked after President Macron's remarks at a national tribute to the murdered high school teacher Samuel Paty last week. The teacher was killed after showing his class drawings of the Prophet during a debate on free speech. Mr. Macron promised France would not renounce the caricatures. The Turkish president claimed in response that his counterpart needed to go and get his mental health tested, with those remarks leading to the French recalling their ambassador from Ankara and strong words from Brussels too, with Joseph Borrell tweeting that the president's words are unacceptable and calling on Turkey to stop this dangerous spiral of confrontation.
What we are after is cooperation and dialogue with the partners. This is more called for than ever, because otherwise we will just go down the spiral of accusing each other, of not respecting each other, fomenting tensions and actually deepening the misunderstandings.
A view echoed by several European capitals, including Berlin.
We stand
in solidarity with France, both with regard to President Erdogan's personal attacks against President Macron from the lowest level, and which I find unacceptable. But above all, we stand in solidarity with France in the fight against Islamic extremists, especially after the abominable act of terrorism that took place last week.
And there are concerns about where this might all lead.
I think Turkey has to be a bit careful, because talking about boycotting trade is not great, and given the current economic situation in Turkey, and France is one of the countries where Turkey actually has a trade surplus. For President Erdogan, it's a very important issue. It's also about domestic popularity, and it's something that he's always had a very strong voice on.
Relations between Turkey and much of the EU are already strained. This latest confrontation will only heighten fears that they could end up on a very dangerous path. Darren McCaffrey, Euronews, Brussels. Well, what has the EU reaction been to all of this beyond what we've just heard? What do MEPs think of it? Well, I had a chance to speak to David McAllister. He is chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee inside the European Parliament, a close ally of Angela Merkel. And I began by asking him what he had thought of what President Erdogan had said over the weekend, and indeed that boycott, or call to boycott, French goods.
Unfortunately, the Turkish government is not taking concrete steps to de-escalate the current situation. Any kind of provocation is unacceptable and must be stopped immediately. And as European Union, we stand united by all our member states. And the European Parliament has asked the Council already weeks ago to stand ready to draw up a list of further sanctions measures if no substantial progress is made in cooperation with Turkey as regards the complicated relations with Greece and Cyprus.
But just on this issue, though, of what Emmanuel Macron, said at Samuel Paty's funeral, which has clearly aggrieved people, not just in Turkey, across the Arab world. Do you understand where they're coming from and why they have taken issue with that?
I just believe that President Erdogan's words are not acceptable. It's inappropriate to talk about a president of a NATO allied country in this way.
Where does this go next? Because we are seeing, as you say, these tensions escalate. You're talking about potentially further sanctions against Turkey. Where does this sounds like a very dangerous path, this escalation?
That's why I said we need to urgently de-escalate the situation. And the European Union has been very clear. We stand in solidarity with our member states, Greece and Cyprus, and we call on Turkey to continue a policy of de-escalation. But in the moment, the Turkish government isn't taking these concrete steps which would be necessary, and that is regrettable. And the European Parliament and the member states have been clear, if this Turkish attitude doesn't stop.
As David McAllister was reflecting there, this is not just an issue that is confined to Turkey. Clearly, we've seen those protests, Oliver, in many other parts of the Arab world, in places like Libya and the UAE and Jordan as well. But the reason that Turkey is essentially at the centre of this story, clearly his words of attack on Emmanuel Macron over the weekend. President Erdogan likes to view himself somewhat as the leader of or the defender of Islam, as he would view it. But additionally, as Mr. McAllister was saying there are also these tensions with Turkey over what is happening in Cypriot waters involving Cyprus and Greece. Now, EU leaders were due and are due to talk about this next month, talk about those further sanctions being imposed on Turkey. There is meant to be a meeting of EU leaders via video conference later this week. It is not officially on the agenda. It may well get on the agenda. Emmanuel Macron might decide it needs to be on the agenda. And there are growing calls, essentially, for EU leaders to stop prevaricating, to stop putting things onto the long finger and actually to get tougher with Turkey now and potentially to implement any sanctions sooner.
Darren McCaffrey joining us there from Brussels. Thank you very much.